1. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of EH Films, episode 4. How is everyone doing? Today is Friday the 13th, so I thought it would be pretty important and a missed opportunity to not record on this date for this specific movie. I saw It Chapter 2 last Saturday, and I really enjoyed it, and I'm going to tell you guys about it. But first, I want to clear up some things beforehand, just regarding other things. Where have I been? Why is my channel practically deserted? And that's because I have been working on a stop-motion movie. It's been taking up most of my time that I'm not spending on, my life. So whenever I'm doing something related to Lego, it's usually that. So I don't really have time to make normal Lego videos right now, and I'm wondering when I release this stop-motion video or movie, if it's going to be the thing that will progress my channel forward. If so, then I'm probably going to continue making stop-motion movies and probably do that as a primary thing for Lego on this channel, instead of just doing a bunch of random videos like reviews and then sometimes more skit type videos. So that's basically where I've been. I've been wanting to kind of clear that up for a while. A lot of people have been asking me where I've been recently, and I've been worried about my subscriber count dropping and stuff like that. So I wanted to make somewhat of a thing talking about where I've been. So that's kind of that. Another thing is the YouTube news that happened recently, and probably by the time that this comes out, I'm probably gonna have nothing else new to add to it. But the rule now, or it will be put in act in the next, I think, 4 or 5 months. I think, which is that children's content or content that targets children won't have ads on it, because it's illegal to target children for advertising and marketing at such a young age. And also the comments, so they won't be making any revenue off of their videos, children's content creators, and the comments will be turned off, and the like to dislike ratio will be turned off, to my knowledge, for these videos and channels that target young children. So really, I don't think this affects me. I went on the YouTube Kids app, had to go through this whole system preferences thing, which I thought was a bit strange, but I guess that's what you should have if you're a kid's version of an app like YouTube or a website. So I went on and I searched up my name, and I guess I'm not there. I don't really consider myself kid-friendly to the extent, anyway, at least young children. I'd consider maybe 10 or 11 and up, I think is the right start. So nowhere below that, I think, because I do use some crude or explicit language sometimes, like shit. So I don't consider myself to be children's or content creator for children. I really don't, and if I am considered that, I don't want to be. So and this has nothing to do with making money for me, because I can't make money anyway. This is more about comments. I really appreciate people commenting on my videos, and I also really pay attention to the like to dislike ratio on my videos. So if I'm not receiving that, that's a big problem for me, because it doesn't really help me improve in any way if I'm not getting comments and feedback on my videos, except if someone decides to DM me on Instagram or something, which I think is very dumb. I think it's a very stupid idea. I feel like children's content creators are gonna be upset about this, and like channels like the Ryan kid, he's gonna get hit super hard. His parents are gonna, I guess they're not gonna make any or very little money on their channel now because they're always sponsored by a certain toy company. Their videos are all basically just ads promoting the certain toy that they have in the video, and it tricks kids to think that this random kid named Brian is actually enjoying and playing these toys, when in reality he's just getting paid to talk about them, so that these impressionable children's minds can receive that information and then go out and purchase the product at said store or retail place. So they're gonna get hit hard, but from what I know, he probably has a lot of deals and stuff anyway, so I don't think he'll get hit too hard with that stuff. Maybe, I don't know, he'll still probably end up getting sponsors and stuff. I know I've seen he has like a toy line, from what I know, because I've seen his face on packaging at like Target. So he probably wouldn't have to work another day in his life, based on how much money they have made already. And I hope that his parents are not being foolish with that money, and they're using it to set up his future and provide for him, and pay off for his college, and basically just set up for his adult life, which I think is the best thing that they should do with that money, or with most of it. I really hope that they're not being immature with the money. So yeah, but I feel bad for the Lego content creators, or some of them. Nick on Planet Rebel made a video about this subject matter, and he might be I don't really think he is, because he did make he made these videos. They were a while back. He made these videos on these like Thomas the Tank Engine fan, or like they were like fan films or whatever, like animated and everything, and they were they have some pretty dark subject matter in them, so I don't know if he would be considered a children's channel after that, but I do know that his Lego Rewind videos are pretty kid friendly. They're pretty family friendly. No crude humor or anything used in those videos, so I think that might be what he's talking about most of the time. But yeah, comments, he said that he doesn't make any money off his videos and that he doesn't care to, but that the comments are very important to him, and that might be a reason why he might stop making YouTube Rewind. So that is a big concern. I feel very bad for Nick there, and I'm not sure if it's just a channel in general that is considered kid friendly, or if it's certain videos that can be marketed towards kids. So if, like, say those Thomas videos that he made aren't kid friendly because of the dark subject matter, the Lego Rewind are. I thought it was just concerning, or containing like a whole channel and not just a channel's certain content, but I might be wrong about that. Brick Attacked as well, Greg. I feel I'm praying for you, man. I know it, I don't know how severe it seems to you, and I feel like you'll be able to fight this for a good amount, but I'm not sure. I see a lot of people on YouTube freaking out about this, or at least recently. It's probably died down a lot by the time that this comes out. But yeah, so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about there on that stuff. And I don't like to talk too much about all that stuff. I just don't find a reason to, really, because most of the time it doesn't concern me. I mean, I still want to grow on YouTube, but I have other aspirations. I have other goals. My job is not on YouTube, because I don't see as it is successful for a good amount of, or as it is successful for some people. I do see it as a very risky move, especially for a job. YouTube fluctuates a lot, and it's it could literally just go down one day and everything would be different. Like the adpocalypse happened back in 2016. Just stuff like that can really like hurt your job if you're a YouTuber. I'm not saying that other things can't hurt other jobs in the real world, like strikes and stuff like that. But you know, I feel like being a YouTuber is a very risky thing to do as like your primary source of income. But I think I salute those who take the risk, in my opinion. But yeah, but I want to be a filmmaker. That's what I want to do. I don't see myself having a career on YouTube. I'd certainly like to grow more. I'd at least like to hit 1,000 subscribers before I just don't make videos anymore because of getting older. Because you know, I'll be off at college in 2 years, something like that. No, like 2.5. Yeah, somewhere around there. But yeah, so I'll be off in college in like 2.5 years, 3 years maybe, I don't know. But yeah, so I'm not gonna really have time to make videos like I am here now, or maybe in college, but definitely not as an adult with a career. And I really hope that I do get into film, and I'm doing everything I can in my power to make my dream come true. So anyways, with that out of the way, I kind of went on a tangent there for a little bit. Let's get to It Chapter 2. Now, I really enjoyed this movie. Rotten Tomatoes did not too much. I mean, 60% is still considered fresh on their website. But in my opinion, I think that a 64 is not very good. It's not a very good rating for a movie, but I strongly disagree with what Rotten Tomatoes rated this movie. It's really one of the first times that I've ever truly disagreed with something that Rotten Tomatoes has to say. There's a couple different movies I've disagreed on, but I 100% agree with the audience score. The audience score for It Chapter 2, if you guys want to go check, that might be a giveaway to what my rating at the end of this movie may be, I think is the perfect score for this movie. And yeah, that's just me. But yeah, I'm very confused why it has such a low rating. I feel like at least a 70, and I would respect that a lot more, because this movie does have problems. I'm not gonna lie, like a lot of movies have problems. This movie's problems are they fluctuate quite a bit, I think, and you know, like there's only a few that I can think of that are quite big, but a lot of them are just small nitpicks. But yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed this movie. I really enjoyed the first movie. I'm not really going to go into details about it in general, the book, and the movie, and not really the miniseries, because the miniseries doesn't have a whole lot with this movie itself. And the 2017 remake, they don't really have too much to do with each other. But yeah, so I definitely recommend seeing just a video kind of telling you what happened in at least the first movie, or like a rundown of the book or something. I'm a huge fan of Stephen King's work, or at least some of it. Stand By Me is a classic. I like Christine. The Shining is an incredible movie, and I really enjoyed the book. There's a lot of good work there. He is it's a very particular, like very specific taste, or acquired taste, as I should say, some of his work. But I think it is definitely my favorite novel of his, and So I got very excited for the remake back in 2017. I saw the trailer. I was never a big horror movie guy, but 2017 kind of changed that. I've learned to respect the horror genre a lot more. The horror genre can put out some of the best pieces of film I think that we've ever seen. Some examples being Psycho, The Shining. I think Get Out could be up there as well, and I think It Chapter 1 is definitely up there as well. I rated it 9 out of 10 back when I first saw it on my first channel, but you will never find that, hopefully. But yeah, so I really enjoyed Chapter 1, and so after seeing the trailer come out in May, I think, April or May, I'll just call it Chapter 1 because that makes it easier. For Chapter 1, I got really excited because I've heard some things about it in general, and I was kind of interested to see what it was like. I was already a big fan of Stranger Things, so this kind of story about kids, and Finn Wolfhard was in it too, so I already knew some things about him from Stranger Things. So I was very excited for this movie. It looked very creepy, very eerie, so I was very intrigued to see it, even though I didn't really like horror at all. I found it to be kind of scary, but when I saw it, I wasn't scared at all. I didn't jump or anything. I actually surprised myself quite a bit. And then after that, I could basically just watch any horror movie without any real, fear or anything like that, which is weird because I can watch a lot of horror movies now without being scared or anything, which I think is kind of strange, but I don't know. I guess I can thank it for that. But so I saw the trailer, and then I immediately wanted to read the book in preparation for this movie because I was very interested in what the story was. So by the time that the movie came out, I was already finished with the book. It's a very good book in my opinion. It is very lengthy. It's like 1,134 pages, I think, exact. That's because Stephen King really likes to overly describe certain things. Like there's a lot of very descriptive sections of the book that go on for a page or even more, and I think a lot of people know about the certain thing in at the end of the book, or towards the end of the book. I don't know exactly where. I'm not weird creep guys, alright? But yeah, it's in there if you're into that stuff. I hope you're not, but it's a little weird. It's definitely a little weird. The whole story of it is actually very weird. Maybe I really like it a lot, so maybe if people want to see it, I will make another episode of the pod, maybe a bonus episode to this, just kind of diving in to the whole lore of it, like Pennywise, or his name, he is it. Like, it's not Pennywise because he's not just a clown. He's so much more than just a creepy clown. He's basically he's this whole creature. So I don't know why people always just refer to him as Pennywise. I guess it's the easiest thing to refer to him as because it's practically his primary form. So I guess I'll just refer to him as Pennywise for the rest of this video. But yeah, if anyone wants to see me kind of dive into the origin of Pennywise, where he came from, the whole lore behind the book, and all that stuff, there's so much, and it's really weird. It's very weird. It's like someone on LSD kind of came up with it. It's just it's kind of funny. It's a very weird lore that that this universe has. But so yeah, I ended up seeing the very first It back in September 8th, I think, of 2017. I really loved it. And I saw it again in theaters, and I own it on Blu-ray. And when I own a movie on Blu-ray, that usually means that I really, really, really enjoy the movie, and I think that it's good enough to pay an extra $20 for. So yeah, and I've seen it, I think, 4 or 5 times since then, and it's very good. The cinematography is excellent. Andy Muschietti is definitely a really really amazing director. He's a big inspiration of mine. He's an upcoming inspiration of mine. I wouldn't really say he's an upcoming director since he's been here since 2013, but he's only released 3 films, and I really like his style and his perspective on certain things, and just the way that he is able to kind of create this whole world within itself. I think is a very good attribute to have as a director. I thought the young child cast was incredible for a child or a cast of children. It's very hard to get a complete cast where I think everyone is solid or above. And that's definitely a really hard thing to do. Standouts being Finn Wolfhard, Jaden Lieberher, Jack Dylan Grazer, and Sophia Lillis. I think they were all excellent in that first movie, especially Sophia Lillis, who's been in a couple indie films, and a couple of them that I've seen are actually very good. She was a lot younger in those movies, and she still puts on a very unique and very well-rounded performance. And then you had like Chosen Jacobs, Jeremy Ray Taylor, Wyatt Olaf, who was in the first Guardians, or the 2. I think he was in the second one too. He played young Peter Quill. So that's where I recognized him from, except I didn't realize it till after it came out. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed the first movie. I really liked it. Also, Bill Skarsgård is incredible as Pennywise. I think he definitely should have gotten nominated for the first movie. I think for Best Supporting Actor. I think his performance was incredible, and I'm surprised it went sort of unnoticed by the Academy, which I guess is not too surprising since they're never too big on horror, except for when Get Out won Best Original Screenplay. So that was definitely a disappointment in my opinion. Very, very, very disappointing. I really expected it, and he's probably not going to win for Chapter 2 either, because the Academy just doesn't roll that way, which I think is dumb. And maybe you'll see another episode of the podcast of me explaining why the Academy is not as prestigious as everyone thinks of it as. So yeah. So It Chapter 2 rolls around. It's very anticipated of me. It was more anticipated than Star Wars Episode 9 for me, and that means a lot from me, coming from a person who is infatuated with Star Wars, as I stare up and look at the the 8 or 9 vintage Star Wars action figures that I have in box hanging on my wall. So yeah, that is definitely a big statement coming from me, that I was looking forward to this movie more than I was Episode 9, and I didn't hate Episode 8. I actually quite liked it, but there was something about Chapter 2 and the first It that just really made me infatuated in this world. So I was too excited constantly looking up clips or leaked photos or images or videos or whatever I could find of Chapter 2. And then when we got that first trailer, I watched it over and over and over and over again. I think the first trailer was definitely an amazing trailer, showing, I think, a full script, or not full script, a full scene. I think that was the first trailer of Beverly and Mrs. Kirsch, which I think was an excellently done scene in the movie up until the special effects, which I will, kind of go on in a bit. But yeah, that was an excellent scene to start a trailer off of, and then I was just very, very excited since then. So It Chapter 2 finally rolls around. I see it. I see it the day that it does come out on September 6th. Very excited. I hope to see it again this weekend or some other time. I'm definitely going to see it a second time in theaters because I just enjoyed it that much. And maybe my opinion might change after the hype has kind of died down for me, and I can look at it as just a normal movie and not something that I've waited about 2 years to see. So this movie rolls around, I go and see it, and I come out and I'm very positive towards it. I really enjoyed it, but I did realize that there were a lot of flaws with this movie. I think first I'll go with the flaws and just kind of get those out of the way. Actually, no. I'll start with the good things. So first of all, Andy Muschietti does an incredible job on the camera work and cinematography. Once again, his directing is just very good. Once again, with the cast as well, they all seem to have a pretty good dynamic and chemistry with each other, except not as good as the children, I might have to point out. But I kind of expected that because with the children, I think it's easier, I think, to get closer to each other. And maybe I'm incorrect with this, but I feel like with the adults, since they were already all pretty successful, it might have been harder for them to kind of bond and get closer and kind of develop that chemistry that the kids had, because most of these kids, except for Finn Wolfhard, who just had Stranger Things, were all very unknown. No one really knew too much about them, so I feel like that could have been an easier way for them to kind of develop their chemistry, since they were all kind of in the same boat, kind of unknown children actors that were trying to become something, when here you have Jessica Chastain and James McAvoy and Bill Hader kind of all like in the same group. But I did think for what it was, their chemistry was pretty good, like not as good as the children's chemistry, but yeah. But some standouts, I think, James McAvoy and Bill Hader. James McAvoy playing Bill Denborough, and Bill Hader playing the adult version of Richie Tozier. And these are all what I'm going through first is the adult version of the characters. Jessica Chastain was Beverly Marsh, or adult Beverly Marsh. She did pretty well. And then Bill Skarsgård again was excellent as Pennywise. Bill Hader was very funny in this movie. I like him in a lot of things. I enjoyed his run on SNL. I think some of his skits are some of the best that SNL has ever had. Some standouts being the Californians, which I think is just an incredible and just hilarious SNL skit, which I always laugh at every single time I see it. James McAvoy coming off of Split and Glass. Glass I did not like, but Split I did like. Split and Glass are entries into the M. Night Shyamalan kind of cinematic universe with the you had what was it? the one with I don't know. It was the whole it was like the comic type thing, but Split was definitely very good. He knows how to play a twisted character, and also he's from the X-Men First Class esque series, so he was definitely one to look out for me, because personally I enjoy him in a lot of things, and he plays a very well-rounded and also a very grounded role as adult Bill, who is now a horror writer and is in the middle of developing one of his books into a Hollywood movie. Bill Hader is Richie Tozier, and Richie is now a very successful stand-up comedian, and Beverly Marsh is now a very successful fashion designer, like in the book. So, yeah. Isaiah Mustafa plays adult Mike Hanlon, who is the only one that stayed in Derry out of the Losers Club, and takes up the role of the town librarian, where he studies it and researches the creature and the rituals to defeat it, and also listens in on stuff, and is the first one to kind of see the carnage that it has created once again after returning after its 27-year hibernation, and he's the one to call up the rest of the losers so they can go and defeat it for the final time. Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise, as I already said, is incredible in this movie as well. Amazing performance, although we don't see him as much as we did in the first movie, because he takes up different forms for some parts of this movie, so we don't see him as Pennywise as much as we did last time, which I think is a bit of a downer, but for what we do get of him, we get a lot of amazing moments and an incredible performance. So Jay Ryan plays Ben Hanscom, who is now a very successful architect, and he's working on a new project. James Ransone plays Eddie Kasparek, or adult Eddie Kasparek, who in the book he has his own limo company, and in this movie I'm not entirely sure what he does. I know they said it, and I'll probably catch it when I see it again, but I'll just go with limo driver for now, because that's what his occupation was in the book. And then we have, I keep forgetting his name, hold on here. It's I forgot who plays the older Stanley. So give me a second. Give me a second. I'm trying to find this. What was he? What? Andy Bean. My bad. Plays Stanley Uris, or adult Stanley, who is an accountant in the book. I think he's also an accountant in the movie. And he is the only member of the Losers Club to end up killing himself instead of going back and facing it, because he had a very traumatizing experience, which is shown in the very first movie, as people who have seen the movie know. So the idea of facing it again is worse than death, so he ends up taking his own life so he doesn't have to go back and face it. So he is not in the movie very long. He is barely in the movie, which I don't really know if is a good thing or a bad thing, because Stanley didn't really do a whole lot last movie either. I mean, he has a little bit more to do in the book, but yeah, he's not too important in the movie itself. So yeah, but anyways, that's the cast, and then we got just some other people who we got the children's or the kid cast returning again, which I think is definitely good. Except they did de-age them, which did look kind of weird during some of the scenes. Sometimes it was very noticeable, and other times it wasn't too much. But I think overall they did an okay job. But I don't really think that it took me out of the movie too much. It might have taken me out one or two scenes at the most. So, yeah. But the story basically is, so 27 years after they think that they defeat Pennywise, they don't, because Mike Hanlon ends up finding a gay man by the name of Adrian Mellon, who is played by Xavier Dolan. My bad. He ends up finding his mangled corpse and a bunch of balloons coming under the bridge that he was here. Okay, so Adrian Mellon is harassed for being a homophobe. No, sorry, he's not harassed for being a homophobe, because he's not a homophobe. He's a homosexual. He's harassed for being a homosexual, and him and his boyfriend are then beat up, and Adrian is then thrown off a bridge, where he proceeds to drown, sort of, until he sees this figure standing by the shore, or by the water, with his hand out. And so it turns out to be Pennywise, who on the count of seeing his boyfriend, Don Haggerty, who is the name of Adrian's boyfriend, goes down and sees Adrian on the other side of the river being held by Pennywise, as Pennywise proceeds to eat Adrian, so leaving his mangled corpse to lie there by the river. Mike ends up coming back down after receiving a police transmission, so he goes down and investigates, and he finds the corpse, he finds this mangled corpse, and then a bunch of red balloons start to fly under the bridge that he was thrown, that Adrian was thrown off of, and come home, I think is what is written. Yeah, is written on blood, or written with blood on the pillars of the bridge, to kind of tell Mike, hey, you better call up these losers. I'm back, and I'm ready to, start some trouble. So he ends up calling each of the losers one by one. First, I think, is Bill, who is on the set of his movie that is adapted from one of his books. And then next, I think, is Bill Hader, or Jay Ryan, or why am I saying it by their... No, okay. Next, I think, is Richie or Ben, who Ben is working on his new building in the ground plan through a Skype call, and Richie is about to go and perform a stand-up act, which is not the best for him, because after he's told that it has returned, even though they don't really remember much from their childhood, things start coming back to him while he's performing, which leads to a not very good show. Beverly Marsh receives her call in the middle of the night from Mike, and her husband, I guess, is very abusive, and basically takes up what her father was to her when she was a child. She grew up in a very abusive household, with her father being just very abusive towards her, and she kind of has the same problem, mirroring herself as an adult. So he suspects that this is someone that she's going to see, and he gets very angry and starts to beat her up but she ends up escaping. So yeah. Eddie receives his call while he's driving, and he then calls, or he's on the call with his wife, who mirrors his mother, who is an overweight woman who is very protective of Eddie as a young child, would give him placebo pills and make him think that he was sick or had certain sicknesses and allergies and stuff like that, and that he was allergic to certain things. So she was very abusive in a mental sense. So he basically ends up marrying someone who's just like his mother. And what I thought was a cool touch is that they actually got the woman who played his mother to play his wife in this movie, which I thought was a very nice touch. So then Stanley gets his call, and he goes up to the bathroom and proceeds to slit his wrists while in the bathtub. But it's not glorified in any way for people who don't like suicide being shown in film and stuff. It's not glorified in any way. All they see is all that they show is the blood going down from his wrists and kind of dripping on the floor. So it's not shown very much for anyone who feels very uncomfortable during suicide scenes in movies. So, but they end up getting the call. They all fly out or drive or whatever pretty shortly after, and they all meet up at this Chinese restaurant, and so they kind of eat there, and Pennywise scares them, and there's some good comedic stuff there with the cast and Bill Hader especially. So then they all kind of contemplate leaving and just not dealing with any of this shit, like anyone I think would. Why would you risk dying for a town that you don't even live in anymore? So that thought kind of circles around throughout the whole movie. It comes back again, and it's definitely a thing that kind of reoccurs throughout this movie. And we get some flashbacks in this movie with Young Losers Club and their hideout that was underground, which I thought was cool, and it was just like how it was in the book, or it was very similar to how it was in the book, where they had their own clubhouse in the Barrens. And also we had some with we had one with the bully, Henry Bowers, who after his confrontation with Mike in the first movie, somehow makes it out alive after falling down this huge well and basically giving himself brain damage. The flood ends up washing him out with all the dead bodies that Pennywise had taken, so he is then framed for the murder of all of these children, and for his father, who he kills in the first movie, and for Belch and Vic, who are his friends, that he also ends up killing, but is in a deleted scene from the first movie. So I guess he would be framed for all of those murders, but he ends up getting sent away to a psychiatric hospital, where he is then kind of kept there for the rest of his life, until Pennywise awakes and needs him again to do his bidding and to kill the losers, or aid him in killing the losers. And I thought the scene that they did there was very well done, with a zombie Patrick Hockstetter, who is one of his friends, who ends up succumbing to one of Pennywise's visions in the sewer, and so there was a zombified version of him to kind of get him out and break him out of the psychiatric ward, which I thought was very cool, and that they had him drive the Mustang that his I think it was Vic's Mustang that he had. So he had Patrick Hockstetter, like a zombie chaperone, which I thought was a very neat thing to do. I thought was kind of funny at some points. But yeah, this movie is very funny. It's kind of like a dark comedy in a sense, because I wasn't really ever scared, but there were definitely parts of suspense and tension. Especially the opening scene, I think, is incredible up until the title card, or whatever you want to call it. I think it is a very good opening to a film. I think some of the scares are very well done. I think that in terms of scares, I think that Chapter 1 did a better job of building suspense, because they didn't rely on jump scares all the time, where I think this movie basically relies on jump scares a lot of the time, and just kind of certain things like that. But there are definitely a lot of cool scenes and stuff like that. One that comes to mind is, I think, the scene from at the football game with the little girl and the birthmark or whatever that she has on her face. I think that scene is excellently done. Amazing acting by Bill Skarsgård. He manipulates this girl into thinking that he's just like her, and that he gets made fun of too, when he's only using her for his personal gain, which is for food, which I think is an amazing thing to show, and especially like real life predators, how they can manipulate younger children into doing their bidding, and getting kidnapped and stuff like that. But I think that whole scene is incredible. Incredible acting by Bill Skarsgård. Very, very. I think out of all the jump scares, that one kind of got me the most. I'm not gonna really give it away, because if anyone still hasn't seen the movie, I don't really want to spoil it too much, even though I kind of am already. But he's counting to 3 for a certain reason, because this girl has this birthmark on the side of her face that she says that kids make fun of her for a lot, and that she wishes that it would just disappear. So he promises her that in the count of 3 that he will make the mark disappear. And so he starts counting to 3, and he does the classic Bill Skarsgård thing, where he has like the dead eye that rolls over to the side while he keeps the other one straight, which I think is incredible to do. I think it's an amazing thing for an actor to be able to do if they're playing this character. It adds to the creepiness of it, and drool starts to kind of come down his mouth, and he takes a long pause at 2, and then the girl's like, you need to say 3, and then it cuts right back to him with his jaws open, and you don't see anything else. But I think the lighting in that scene, it's like just a little firefly that's illuminating the scene, and I think that it's such a beautifully shot scene from under these bleachers at a baseball game, and just like, I don't know, I just think it's very very well done. Some others I think have to be in the when all the losers are collecting their tokens and stuff. I like some of the stuff from those kind of scares, because they're all separated from each other. Beverly's encounter with Mrs. Kirsch, which I think was definitely well done, up until the CGI used for the monster, the big saggy the saggy grandma kind of. I feel like they should have shown her less. I think what they did in the trailer was a lot better, where they just showed her legs, because she honestly does not look very good. She looks very fake. But I think the whole scene leading up to that is definitely well done. The actress who plays Mrs. Kirsch, Let me look real quick. Joan Gregson. She is very, very good in this movie. Very creepy. She's just a very interesting piece to this movie. And yeah, like she does an incredible job, especially like the 10-second stare scene where she's just frozen with the same expression. It's great, and people in the theater were laughing because laughing helps take away the tension, I guess, which is a good thing if people are laughing during a horror movie, especially if it's like a kind of awkward and scared laugh. So yeah, but yeah, so that scene I thought was incredible, leading up to the actual scare. I think everything besides that in that scene, if they did the scare differently, it would have probably been my favorite scene in the movie. Even the stuff after, when she's on her way out and the door opens and she sees Bill Skarsgård, or Bob Gray, who is Pennywise's kind of alias, putting on like the makeup as he kind of starts to pull away, and the blood starts like coming down into like the lipstick kind of makeup style that you see on Pennywise. I thought that was a really good scene as well to kind of close off that whole thing, but definitely they needed to change the CGI for that. But yeah, so and then Richie has a scene at the arcade where he's playing with what turns out to be Henry Bauer's cousin, who is actually quite a kind fellow, I guess, who is complimenting Richie on his Street Fighter skills while they're playing, and Richie beats him. And he asks if he wants to play another, but the cousin says that he should get going, and then Henry Bowers comes out of the movie theater, or like the movie, and then starts making fun of Richie, like, what are you doing with my cousin, you fag, and stuff like that. And I don't agree with any of the language or anything. I'm not trying to offend anyone. I'm just kind of going off of what the movie has to say. So Richie gets very upset about this and runs out towards kind of the main park area with the Paul Bunyan statue, and it comes alive and attacks him, and then he closes his eyes and it's like, it's not real, and it disappears, or it goes back to normal. So when Richie goes and gets his token for the ritual of Chud, which is this ritual that they need to do in order to defeat Pennywise once and for all. It's in the book, but it's described a lot differently here in the movie. And it actually is something that works in the book. So, yeah. But anyway, I was about to say anyways. They need a token of their past. So Beverly goes and gets like this postcard that Ben wrote her, or on the back he wrote a poem for her, because he has a deep feelings for Beverly, and always has. So that was kind of her token, and Richie's token was an actual token from the arcade outside of the movie theater. But he goes back to the park area where the same Paul Bunyan statue is, in what I think is another incredible scene, where he then sees Pennywise sitting on top of the Paul Bunyan statue with a bunch of balloons in an upside down pyramid, and everyone in the background just immediately freezes and they're all standing still, facing towards Pennywise, which I think is another excellent scene. Kind of mirrors what was done in the library in the first movie, which I definitely like, including things in the background like that. The whole color palette changes to just black and white, kind of like this musty kind of black and white, which it feels kind of out of place, but I really enjoy I really enjoy the selection, the choice of putting it in there, and we get like what I thought was about to be like a music number from Pennywise, but we only get a couple lines. I know your secret, your dirty little secret. I'm not. I can do a Pennywise, but I'm not doing it right now. I'm somewhat sick. I forgot to mention that, but yeah, I am sick. It's kind of allergies and stuff. I have a very, very sore throat. So yeah, I'm not in the best of shape to be doing that. But he kind of says those lines, basically telling Richie that he knows that he has feelings for men, that he is his sexuality is not well respected among the people in Derry, and how he feels towards Eddie, which isn't really talked about much in the movie. It's not talked about a whole lot in the book either. It's not even really discussed at all in the first movie. They're usually just shown to be goofing around and getting at each other playfully in the first movie. So I like the inclusion of this kind of storyline or character arc, I guess you could call it. But I think that it should have been somewhat hinted at in the first movie. There should have been a little bit more done there, because I think not really having too much and then just suddenly bringing it up here with a flashback and this scene here, I just thought was a tad forced. Even though I do like what they were trying to do, I just think it should have been hinted at in the first movie. But I think this scene is very well done. Richie ends up doing the same thing that he did in the past, closing his eyes, and it's like, it's not real, it's not real. But Pennywise doesn't leave here, and he chases him around. So yeah. So then we got some more stuff with Henry Bowers, and he goes to the where all the losers are staying, and attacks. He attacks Eddie for a good funny scene, I think. Stabs him right in the cheek, but Eddie just keeps he starts laughing, which I thought was a little out of place at first, but it ended up being a very favorite scene of mine. I thought it was a very funny thing to include, and he ends up stabbing Henry Bowers through the shower curtain. So he gets stabbed like in the face, and then he goes around and like stands in the shower behind the shower curtain, and then just stabs Henry Bowers right in the chest, and is still like laughing, but he's like clutching his face, and so he crawls around the wall while like the rest of the losers like going up and seeing like what the noise is, and he's like, oh, Henry Bowers is in my bathroom, and he should have cut his mullet or whatever. And I thought everyone started laughing there, and I thought it was funny. I was very worried because I really like James Ranson as Eddie in this movie. I like Eddie as a character in general, but he did die in the book. So I knew that he was probably going to die here, and I didn't want him to die so early, because he doesn't die this early in the book. So luckily he doesn't die this early on, even though it's not too early on because it's about halfway through the movie at this point. But yeah, he ends up being fine, and then Henry Bowers ends up escaping and goes over to the library, where he then goes after Mike and tries to kill him. But then Richie, I think, is it Richie? I think it's Richie who ends up coming to the rescue and taking out Henry once and for all by hitting him over the head, I think with an axe. He cuts into his head with an axe, and he slumps over and he's dead. But yeah, so that's kind of that. And then they end up going to... I'm skipping through a lot because this movie is 2 hours long or 3 hours long. So there's a lot that I'm not talking about. Like, there's a lot of small stuff that I'm not talking about. But I'm just trying to get through this. So Bill ends up meeting a kid who has also had an encounter with Pennywise, or it, saying that these voices keep coming from his sink and his bath drain. And Bill asks, like, is it like a clown? And he's like, children, and like Bill's like, a clown? Is it a clown that's like speaking to you? And this kid kind of gives him like this look, like, oh, this guy knows. And there's this really great scene with James McAvoy here, where he's kind of shaking the kid up a little bit, telling him to like leave Derry, like just make up something and have your parents move you guys far away from here. Like, you guys can't be here. It's too dangerous, and stuff like that. After having his own vision to get his token, which is the paper boat that he made Georgie, his little brother, who ends up dying at the hands of Pennywise back in 1988, when Georgie loses the paper boat that he made for him. So he ends up getting that, and he kind of feels the same responsibility to protect this kid, since he couldn't protect Georgie, and that's kind of what succumbs to him for the rest of this movie, and is kind of the source of his character arc being completed, because he ends up failing to save this kid after this kid goes to the carnival and is in the Hall of Mirrors all alone. He ends up getting trapped and faces Pennywise while Bill is standing right on the other end, desperately trying to break the glass to get to the child. In another very terrifying scene that was shown a bit in the trailer, but what isn't seen is a repeated motion of Pennywise smashing his head up against the glass, and it keeps kind of cracking a little bit until it just fully shatters, and he just completely devours the kid as blood sprays on the glass in front of Bill, and he runs out of there, very ashamed that he could not save this kid who ended up dying at the hands of Pennywise. So you kind of see it's like an 0 for 2 thing here, where he couldn't save Georgie, and here he couldn't save this poor innocent child. So then he ends up going, and he's like, you know what, I'm just gonna face Pennywise by myself. I'm gonna go and take care of him. You know, I'm gonna do my thing. And the other losers kind of get the word of this through, like, I think it's a walkie-talkie. So they all go down there to stop Pennywise once and for all, and we're in like the final confrontation. They all go down to the sewer, where they run into Pennywise again in the form of the old lady, Miss Kirsch, kind of the monster version, which I think is done a lot better here. because you see her face more, and it doesn't look as fake. So I really appreciated that part more, and so she ends up pulling Beverly under the water, and they all have to rescue Beverly. So then they end up going down to his actual lair, where it's basically like his crash, Pennywise's crash site for when he crash landed on Earth millions of years ago, as just this entity that is unfathomable to human eyes. So no one can really conceive his true form, and no one can really fully understand and comprehend it. So his true form looks like something else to normal people, because his true form is just, it's too crazy, I guess. It's like too hard to understand for a human. So that's how he crashed down in where Derry is now, and has been residing there ever since, killing people and feeding on children, and back then it was settlers that he killed off, and then he would hibernate for 27 years, and then go back into action and kill more people. But yeah, so in this movie, they go down to the crash site, and they go and so Mike has this weird like leather kind of cone thing that he steals from this Indian tribe who has battled it before, and they take part in the ritual of Chud, and they tell him all about it, and he takes some drugs, and it's all like it's explained earlier. I probably should have brought this up, but that's kind of how he persuades the losers from not leaving and going back home, that this ritual is the thing that can defeat it. So they end up putting in all their tokens, they light it on fire, and then they say some things, I think. It's something like that. I forgot what they say, but yeah, I'll make a follow-up, as already said, like a bonus video. But they end up doing this thing, and it ends up not working, the ritual of Chud, and so they all get angry at him. Pennywise comes, and he's like, Mike, why didn't you tell? No, I'm sorry, I cannot do it right now. I apologize. I'll make it up to you, and I'll definitely do a video, or something where I do it, because it's actually pretty good, and I have a lot of pride in my Pennywise impression. But he basically tells him, like, why did you lie to these people that like this ritual works, when they didn't, the people who did it against me all ended up getting murdered and killed, and that they didn't believe. And so everyone is like, like, Mike, what the fuck, like, why didn't you tell us all this shit? And so he's like, sorry, I needed to have something to make you guys believe, so like, I guess since we're down here, we better just find a way to kill this guy. So this whole battle ensues. Pennywise turns into this giant half clown, half spider crab thing hybrid, which I think looks really interesting. And there's a bunch of different things going on here. There's a lot of comedic lines, a lot of different scenes, some standout scenes, I think, here are the very scary or not scary at all doors, as seen in the first movie, and we get them again here. And in the first movie, when they open the door, they see half of Betty Ripson, who was one of the kids who went missing back in 1988. And in this movie, they see the other half of her. And then they also open the door to like a small little Pomeranian, who then, after like a minute of like comedic lines and stuff, because it's a reference to a line said earlier in the movie, turns into like this weird skinless dog type thing, which looks kind of weird, but I laughed during that scene, so I thought it was pretty interesting. And then there's another great scene with Beverly and Mike. Mike is down in the clubhouse with like dirt pouring into it, and then Beverly is in a stall from their middle school or high school or whatever, where she got bullied. And on the other end are people who harassed her or like treated her like shit or were like bullies to her in her past. So you had like her father and Greta, who was the girl. I think was Greta in there. I think it might have been her who was in the door too, and Henry Bowers in there too, where we get a nice reference to The Shining. We actually get a couple references to The Shining in this movie, but the door keeps opening and the stall is like filling with blood, and so there's this whole thing about Ben completing his character arc by telling Beverly how he truly feels about her, since they never really he never really does that in the first movie, and he denies writing her the love poem, January Embers, or no, your hair's winter fire, January Embers, my heart burns there too, which I think is an incredibly sweet poem to write. It's very it's a very like methodical and well thought poem too, if you think about it. But he ends up reciting the poem, and she fully realizes that he was the one all along who wrote that for her and had those feelings towards her. So they end up having this really nicely shot scene where it's both of their kind of like enclosures, but it's filmed sideways. So it kind of reminisces the Jesus painting with the two hands reaching out, where it's like, I can't even really describe it. It's like one hand here, and then like some guy's like leaning up on like a hill with like his hand out. It kind of reminded me of that piece of art, yeah. So I really like that scene too. It's really awesome, incredibly shot scene. But yeah, so we get some things, we get some jokes, we get Bill Hader Richie going into the deadlights after trash talking Pennywise, which I thought was a very funny scene. And then we also get Eddie's death, which came from a very pivotal line, I think, in the like 20 minutes before maybe. And it's a very sad death. You feel very sad during it. I was on the verge of tears because this movie did a very good job of having you attached to these characters. So it was very heartbreaking to see him die, even though I knew that it was coming. So yeah, but they end up defeating Pennywise, and I think it's in a very stupid way. It's a very dull and dumb and anticlimactic way. They basically just tell him that he's just like a bully, and that he's like stupid, and that he's lame, and that he sucks, and that he's just like a dumb clown. And he ends up shrinking into like this little fried egghead Pennywise, little baby Pennywise, which I thought was kind of, to be honest, I thought it was kind of cute. His head kind of like smushes up against like the wall that he's leaning against, and they're like trying to like take out his heart, and he's like still trying to fight back, but his arms are like shrivels, because they've basically just whittled him down to nothing, which I think was definitely anticlimactic. I would have loved to see something else, maybe something more reminiscent of the book, but in the book the Ritual of Chud actually works somewhat, instead of just not working at all. But I guess it's interesting that they did try something new. I just wish that talking it down and just kind of dehumanizing it was kind of like the more dull way to do it. But I don't know, that's just me. And then we get an amazing scene afterwards So they all go back. The remaining 5 of them go back. Is it 5? I think it's 5. You got Richie, Bill, Beverly, Mike, and Ben. Yeah. Okay, so it's 5. So Eddie's dead. He's left there to die, and we get a really emotional scene that's mirroring what happened in the first movie. It was a exchange in the very beginning of the movie with Richie and young Richie and Bill, where Richie makes a poorly or he has a poorly made comment towards Betty Ripson, who is or just kind of like a comment that Bill doesn't really agree with, about her being dead and covered in maggots and in a ditch. And since Bill had to suffer with Georgie's death, even though still telling himself that Georgie was still just missing there, I thought was because he kept telling himself that Georgie wasn't just dead, that he was just missing throughout most of that movie until the very end, where he finally kills off that thought, literally by shooting his brother in the head, or like not his real brother, but just the Pennywise embodiment of him. But he ends up telling Richie, no, she's not dead, she's probably just missing, because that's what he's feeling towards Georgie. So he kind of relates that comment about Betty Ripson towards Georgie. And what I picked up from this is in this movie, where they're all huddled around Eddie's dead body, and they say that like they need to leave him, and they're telling Richie like he's dead, like we need to go, because like the whole cave is like falling apart and like crumpling above them. He keeps like telling them like, no, he's just injured, like he'll be all right, we need to like take him to a hospital. Kind of like the denial in grief, the denial stage shown in the stages of grief, I thought was very reminiscent of the exchange between the two in the first movie, except this time the roles were switched, with Richie being the one who was in denial and Bill being the one who was being truthful about this, which I thought was a very nice touch. I don't know, I'm guessing that was on purpose. I hope that was on purpose, because it's a very nice touch to pick up on. But we also get beforehand. I forgot to mention this, we also get an amazing scene that closes Bill's character arc, where it's reminiscent of the scene where Pennywise is kind of puppeteering Georgie in this vision that Bill has in the first movie down in the basement. And here it's Bill talking to, or Bill is in the water, and younger Bill is by the stairs, and Georgie is kind of floating there saying like, you lied and I died. And Bill looks over at his hand and sees that he is the one controlling Georgie. Basically, he's the one that he's the only person telling himself that he's the reason for Georgie's death, which is very symbolic of the whole puppeteering thing, that he is the puppeteer, he's the one controlling his thoughts, telling him that he's the one doing this, or is the cause of why Georgie was dead, or Georgie is dead. But he ends up shaking all of those thoughts and ends up telling himself that his younger self, that he's not the reason for his death, and his younger self is in denial. He pulls out the gun that Mike has in the movie, or in the first movie. It's like the one that used to kill sheep and stuff on farms, with like the thing, like the little poker thing that goes through. He tries to kill older Bill with it, but Bill turns it around onto younger Bill. Kind of a symbolic change of thought, and basically like stop, like symbolizing a stop to this reoccurring thought that Bill has had all of his life. So I think that was an amazing scene done, or an amazingly done scene as well. And yeah, so they end up leaving. They go back to the quarry, it's the quarry, where they jump off the cliff into the lake. And we have one last very emotional scene with Bill Hader, who just breaks down in tears after they start talking about how Eddie would be freaked out by, the dirty water and stuff. And we get like a good group hug with all of the losers around Richie's sobbing kind of bent over body, which I thought was very sweet to show the chemistry and the friendship, the true friendship, and just love that is shown between this band of people. And then we get another really good scene, kind of closing off everything with Richie going back to the kind of this fence area by this tunnel. And this was shown earlier in the movie through a flashback where it's seen that Richie is carving his initial and Eddie's initial onto this thing. And at the end of this movie, he goes back and he finishes this carving, which I thought was extremely sweet. And I actually shed a tear during that because I thought it was just a very beautiful scene. Along with the sweeping score in this movie, which I think is done excellently, as well as with the first movie. The score is done by Benjamin Wellfish, I think is his last name. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong, but he is excellent. He's an excellent composer, and I think that it's just a very amazing soundtrack to listen to. Most of the pieces in there are very, very good. But yeah, so that's kind of the end of the whole story. I feel like during that I kind of went through what I liked and what I didn't like, but I'll go through it again. What I liked: the cast is incredible, the cinematography and directing is very good, the music is very good. There are a lot of really great scenes in this movie, but there are a lot of kind of small nitpicks that I have as well here, and also just a lot of great messages and ways to close character arcs and finally just complete certain character arcs, I think, which is done very well. And then we also got some small nitpicks, which I want to point out. I think Henry Bowers had a little bit not really anything to do here. He was just kind of used as a plot device, sort of like a MacGuffin, kind of, but not really something that the characters needed to obtain, just something that the characters had to watch out for, which I think they should have at least done something more with his character, or just not really had him in there at all. But I would have been more favorable towards him having more of a role in somewhat, but ending up getting killed instead of just being like this guy who has to do Pennywise's bidding. The de-aging effects on the children in some scenes looks very noticeable, and it can take you out of the film. The ending, I think, with Pennywise is very anticlimactic, and it's quite dull, because it's not really the child-like belief anymore. It's more of the just a weird ending, kind of anticlimactic, very dull. As I've already said multiple times, I would have liked something more as an ending instead of just, how it ended here. And the CGI and the jump scares, I feel like, were relied on a lot more here than they were in the first movie. I feel like the first movie relied a lot more on suspense in general, and then a jump scare or something, where this movie just kind of can jump in with some bad CGI jump scares which I don't appreciate as much, and I think is a bit lazy. But, you know, it depends on what you like, even though that jump scares are kind of a frowned upon cliche, especially if they're done very poorly, because, you know, it doesn't, I don't feel like it takes too much effort to put or to make an atmosphere terrifying, or to build a scary atmosphere, or create tension in a scene. I don't think it's a terribly hard thing to do, that you only have to rely on jump scares and stuff like that. So I feel like they could have done that a bit better. But in general, I really enjoy this movie. I think it's a really fun time at the movies. Really, it's not the best movie in terms of just like filmmaking wise, because of some small nitpicks and stuff that they do have there in the movie. But I think overall you're going to really enjoy it. If you enjoyed the first movie, you probably have already seen it and you probably really enjoy it. Or I think just if you like horror in general, or a really solid cast, or just really great camera work or directing, good score, I think if you like a combination of any of that, you would really, 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 really like this movie. Even though this movie's story isn't as strong as the first one, since it's kind of retelling what the first movie already did, which does make it hard, since the book itself is intertwined between the adult and child timeline, since it constantly goes back and forth, and it's not just one story after the other, where here it's two different movies, so the children go first and then the adults go next. It's constantly going back and forth. Like, it starts with the adults, then goes to children, the adults and children, and it goes back through different very pivotal points in both timelines. So I feel like it would have been too long to do that in one movie. So I guess this was definitely the better way to do it. But the chapter 2 would always be lacking in story due to that reason. But yeah, I definitely really enjoyed this movie. I definitely recommend it to anyone who wants to just go and have a fun time at the movies. And I think I think with everything said, there's a lot of good things about this movie, and there are some bad things, but personally, I think I really enjoyed this movie, and I think I'm going to enjoy it again with a second viewing. So for right now, and maybe I'll make the bonus after I see it again, because I really want to know if my opinion will change about this movie. I'm going to have to go with an 8 out of 10, as I already stated earlier. I'm really dragging this movie on, or this episode on. But yeah, I'm going to have to go with an 8 out of 10. I know that's fairly high for what I've been describing so far, but I think just the pros outweigh the cons in terms of quality. So yeah, I'm just going to stick with that for now. Really hope you guys enjoyed this episode of EH Films. Please let me know if you've seen It Chapter 2. What did you think about it? What did you think about the first It? Were you disappointed with It Chapter 2 compared to the first It? Which one do you think is better? Let me know down in the comments down below. Personally, I think the first It is better, just because it doesn't really have as much problems as this movie does. But that's just my opinion. I want to know what you guys have to think about this movie down in the comments below. Stay tuned for a bonus episode where I dive into the lore of It, and let me know if you want to see that. I mean, it would definitely mean a lot if people actually want to see that video, and if I'm not just making it for whoever to watch, you know. So yeah, just let me know down in the comments below. What do you think about this movie? Do you think it's better than the first It? Which one did you like better? And if you want to see a bonus episode covering more of the world of It. And I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of EH Films. It is currently 2 in the morning. I'm very tired. I'm very, very sorry. I keep dragging this out for a while. But anyways, I really hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time.